everybody.
What's going on?
Peace, brothers.
Welcome to another episode of Our Point of View. I am your host, Mike Sheely, joined with Captain Jackson and State Representative Derek Jackson. And tonight it is the fellas' night. So we're going to go ahead and introduce our guest. Cap, why don't you go ahead and introduce our first guest?
Man, let me tell you, man, this cat who so graciously decided to come on is one of my co-workers. We are both retired from the fire department. Now he is the coordinator. He is the man down in the Atlanta area tech. My man, the entrepreneur, the instructor, the president, the boss, and former captain with me at the fire department, my man Corbin Davis. What's going on, Cap?
Hey, how y'all doing? How you doing? Thank you for the introduction, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you.
All right, and secondly, we have one of my good friends, one of my childhood friends, the one and only Quillen El Haka Aziz. Sorry if I butchered that. Don't murder me.
It's all good, brother. You almost had it. It's Hakeem Aziz. But I'm glad to be here with you, brothers, tonight. And thank you for the invite. I'm honored.
Thank you.
Great panel of brothers and sisters.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and swing things to you, Mr. Darren. What you got for us, man? What you got?
Well, listen, we are so excited. Every now and then we have an all men show talking about some topics that are relevant to men. And so we wanted to make sure our point of view audience get a chance for this next hour or so, get our perspective on some topics such as politics, sports, and this pandemic. I mean, Cap, these last 12 months, right, really changed our lives as we knew it. So how did this pandemic change our lives from a man's perspective?
Man, let me tell you, it really did a 360 on it in a matter of speaking. I mean, it literally flipped it upside down for a lot of people now. And so depending on who you talk to, they're going to give you a different perspective. It was good for them because it slowed things down. I'm from California, and when everything shut down, as far as people going to work, people driving, this is one component which could be viewed as good. Folks weren't going to work, they weren't driving, they weren't on public transportation, they weren't doing anything, they had to stay at the house. Well, interestingly enough, because there weren't vehicles and buses and trucks and all these other modes of transportation that involve gasoline and emissions, the air quality was better. So you think about a place like LA where it's just smog ridden. You can't tell the smog from the brush fire smoke is so thick. But in that instance, the sky, the atmosphere, the air was actually clear. It was breathable. I mean, it's breathable anyway, but I mean, can you just imagine a smog-free atmosphere in Southern California? So that was something something positive that came out of something that up to this point, why has been really, really challenging. And I think challenging is using it lightly, considering that folks have lost their lives. Over 500,000 people have lost their lives. Right. But on the flip side, you had individuals that were in marriages and in committed relationships that found out that this is not really, it's not for me. I'm too close to my spouse. We are so close that we can't even get along because we're accustomed to having that apart time or that away time from when they leave the house in the morning, they're gone to work or doing whatever they do, they come back and they're able to kind of pick up where they left off because there's been some space there. So that told folks about their relationship. So depending on who you ask, will depend on how this pandemic has affected them. So it affected people in different ways, different fashions and different genres.
Wow. So Quillen,
Sure.
what say you, brother? I mean, how did this pandemic change your life, right? I mean, either from a social standpoint, economic standpoint, relationship. I mean, it impacted us all, but I'm just curious for, you know, for your age group, you and Mike, right? Y'all may have uh, seen it from a different vantage point. How did it impact you?
Yes, sir. This is an excellent question and very important to be able to touch on. And I like to be able to introduce some of my background so that you kind of guys know a little bit more. I'm not gonna go too in depth, because it can get a little lengthy. But I'm actually a researcher at UCLA in the African Studies Department. I'm completing my master's in my final semester right now.
Go
And,
Bruins.
What's
yes,
up?
sir.
What's up?
Yes,
What's up?
sir.
What's up?
Yes, sir.
Join that
I'm actually in
club, brother.
Orlando now. Yes, sir. I'm in Orlando actually. I'm in Orlando, Florida now.
Okay.
But I've never been to the school though, and I'm gonna touch on that in a second here. I did my undergraduate at FAMU last year. I just finished up last year with my bachelor's. But
Congrats.
thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Congrats.
It was interesting because thank you. It was interesting, and praise be the Most High, because uh, nothing being in college and being a traditional student to where you're going to the school. I like to speak at the collegiate point at first. And when you're going to school on a regular, you're used to going to the campus, doing your thing, doing whatever it is you do with the activities, engaging with the people, and just handling things that you need to handle. That never had been seen. One of my professors had told me at FAMU in over 100 years. We never had a pandemic in over 100 years, a whole century. And for that to happen like that, and just see how the school was shut down like that. We just all had to convert, going digital. Thank goodness that we was in a time period where we were actually able to do that, because 30 years ago we wouldn't have been able to do that. You know, I'm 24, about to be 25 in a few weeks from now, and for my age group, it was quite interesting because I know quite a bit of people that were around our age were quite upset that they couldn't really go outside and do certain things that they wanted to, because they like to be able to get out and you know do what they feel like they would like to be able to do, participate in certain things they would like to be able to participate in. And then relating it to, a lot of people were counting on graduation. A
Right.
lot of kids never got that experience. I had
Wow, that's
an
right.
associate's degree, and I actually went to Atlanta Tech as well. I got my certificate from Atlanta Technical College in Cisco Networking. So I had that graduation, and then I graduated from Valencia Community College down in Orlando.
Mhm.
So I had a couple of graduations, but it's some people that went out and through all the schools in the nation and the world that would never got that experience to be able to get the graduation. I know we even got it canceled for UCLA this year. They're not doing it this year. We're not going to do that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I can imagine that, and it's students that's coming into college as well. Um, they never really got the opportunity to be able to be in college without the pandemic. See, I was a senior at FAMU when that popped off. So I was in my last semester, so I had already had gotten um, the experience, the full experience, you know, which was great for me. And um, it wasn't too bad as far as me personally switching over to doing the online thing, because you kind of get a rhythm after being in school for so many years about how you like to be able to do things and how you want things to be able to go. So it actually kind of worked out good. But in addition to that, man, quite a other people that may have been in college that may have had to get a little laid off, or they may have had a hard time adjusting to online, because that's why a lot of maybe students they want to go in person, because online is just not their thing. Most students are not, before the pandemic, they were not online students. As a matter of fact, it was an article that I was reading a couple of days ago to finish up a paper. It was a very, very low percentage of online students throughout the world that were even online to be in college. So that's quite a shift from doing that, especially when you're a certain major. And also what they don't tell everybody is that when the pandemic is going on, and still now, only certain majors are actually allowed on campus on a regular. Like your STEM majors, maybe in the medical fields and things like that, so, like labs and stuff like that, things that you actually need hands-on training so that you can be able to be productive into society.
That's
And
right.
Versus certain other things that you may not need to necessarily be in a particular lab environment hands-on, and they may have more at risk to the COVID, of course, maybe with being there, but that's what you got to be able to do in order for you to be able to be effective. Otherwise, you have to pause your program. And quite a lot of programs are not admitting new applicants. They did not admit new applicants this past year. They had to close it down. Like I looked at some doctor programs for like Yale, Columbia. They quite a bit of those schools and other schools, not even just like those, but other schools, they closed down the application pool because they're trying to focus on making sure that these students that are already in the program are good, and let's see how we can be able to figure out how they can be able to move through smoothly.
Right.
And then see what's going to happen with the pandemic, so that next year we can be able to be on point and see how we need to roll with it. So you weren't even having the opportunity to apply. Relationship wise, I was in a relationship. It was going to be a solid and looking to be a long-term relationship. And I was fine. We both moved back home to be able to, after we graduated with our bachelor's degrees in undergrad. And just quite a lot of things in the world was just getting frustrating for the sister. And just things wasn't going her way. And the pandemic did have an effect on it. And, things, not just because of that, but, just life can hit you hard. And it just did not work out, in that way. And that can pay dividends for other people too as well, because around this age group, you may not be able to be around your significant other or your partner, or your woman or your man. And so, y'all may have to handle your business and or make sure that you on your P's and Q's the way that you need to be on your P's and Q's. And although the communication virtually, y'all may be doing your thing as best as you can,
Right.
but it may not be able to be the same as you guys being in person and being able to look out for the other in that particular way. And in addition to that, man, some like our college actually slid us a little check, unexpectedly. We wasn't expecting that. It wasn't that much. It was like a few hundred, but still, it's nice to be able to get an additional check. And then you may have gotten a pandemic check, and then as a college student, that assists you in any way. You get an extra. And what I will say is, as far as a benefit, in relation to this, is like, for me, being able to be in the comfort of my home or wherever I want to be able to be, and be able to go to class or be able to not have to spend the gas to go out to campus,
Right.
And do that. That actually has been able to be a benefit. But some of the detriments would be perhaps, I can't use the library. A lot of the libraries have been shut down, or like certain in-person like interaction specialties that you can be able to use from people that are specialized in certain areas. You can't use those things. Did you ask another piece of the question, brother? I want to make sure I answered every piece.
No. I think you, as a matter of fact, Quillen, I appreciate you breaking it down, because as you were breaking it down and sharing with our point of view audience, the question that it prompted me to ask Brother Davis here, after this pandemic, can we go back to life as it was? Are we going to, is this the new normal? right? I mean, we've been using Zoom now for 12 months.
Right.
And so as Quillen was breaking it down, I'm like, you know what? I don't think we can go back. What's your thought on that, Brother Davis? Can we go back? Is this the new normal?
Well, I think one of the things I wanted to really talk on is hearing you talk about from a student standpoint and me being a program chairperson over a college program, I really get to hear your perspective as a student. And I'm gonna tell you this is a couple of things when we talk about going back. Let me just say a couple of things. My background is in education, and I'm also in the medical field. I'm a paramedic. So I teach emergency medicals, basically paramedics, EMTs, advanced EMTs, and firefighters, in a pre-hospital setting. And with that being said, we have had to shift in both the medical industry and in the educational industry to adapt to the new normal. And when I say the new normal, there's a lot of things that we took for granted. A lot of things that we didn't take the time to really think, it'll never change. We can just keep doing what we're doing. And I say that because we've had to adapt. And I think when you adapt, you have a new way of doing things. A lot of us didn't cook before the pandemic. Guess what? Now you're cooking. Now you're pulling up recipes. I want to go to ground zero. If you can remember 2 days into when we really found out that we had a pandemic, that was the day that many people started saying, oh my God, this might be for real. And people started changing habits. They said, I'm not going outside. I'm not driving to the mall. I'm not doing this because I don't want to get exposed just in case this is real. But it got so real that people started losing interaction. They started, utilizing other tools. If I had been a smart investor, I would have invested in Zoom, WebEx, and I would have invested in Microsoft Teams. Because I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of people who invested in these technologies and now rich. And it's really one of those things we have to really understand is that as a society, the new normal is going to be more or less in a sense, this is it. We have to make sure that we understand that we went from a localized infection, where there was just a few people being affected to an epidemic, from epidemic to pandemic. And going through those stages, people needed to recognize travel. We always knew that travel would spread the any virus that was contagious. We knew we had to shut down travel. So that was immediately what they did. They wouldn't shut down travel. But then at some point in time, we needed to decide, is it airborne? And when we decided that it was airborne, we had to really go back and take a back seat and say, wait a minute, it's airborne. So how do we fix that? And I can remember, at the college level, we were training some firefighters for a local fire department, and they were all new employees, and we had to go from hands-on training to a limited lab situation. And what I mean by limited lab situation, meaning they could only come to campus for a lab and they had to leave. All instruction had to be done via Zoom, via WebEx, whatever tool you were using for training. So I think our normal, our new normal will involve a lot of different elements. Going to the grocery store, many of us are now having food delivered. My wife is the queen of one of the online delivery companies. And literally I come home and there's groceries sitting by the front door. That's the new norm. I've probably eaten so much by calling one of the online food places. They deliver, one of my favorite restaurants, chicken place, Chick-fil-A. 20 minutes, it's at the house, fixed exactly the way I want it. So the new norm, I think there's a lot of industries that are coming out of this that are going to be successful, food delivery services. And it has put a lot of people to work in the Black community. Okay. I'm gonna tell you this, there's a lot of people who have gotten gainful employment from Uber, fast food delivery, grocery delivery, even shopping for people. So I think that we have to look at it as a, not necessarily as a gift horse, but and I'm going to say something that's very profound. Education hasn't changed in 100 years. The classroom looked exactly the same 100 years ago. So if you imagine this, we've been teaching for 100 years the same exact way, teacher in front of the students, students in the classroom sitting, taking in that environment. I'm big on student engagement. And one thing that online learning and all, educators, we have to be able to understand, we've got to engage our students in a new way now. The classroom itself is no longer just the teacher leading them. It's got to be student centered. It's got to be centered around the students. And in order to engage the students in an online environment, we've got to look at building relationships. Building relationships is one of the strongest tools an educator can use in order to be able to work with students. The problem is that when you're in an online environment, it takes you away from the old norm to the new norm. And it's hard to build relationships when you don't see people's facial expression.
Right.
A student sitting in the bed with their hair bonnet on in class watching you teach it's not the way that we want to teach. You can't build relationships when you're still in your house robe and you're learning, some complicated subject. I can't even take you seriously as an educator when I see you. I think about, one of my students, getting up in the middle of.
You didn't say hair bonnet though. I'm still stuck
bonnet.
on hair.
Bonnet, stocking cap.
I can't take my students serious when you see them and you see them in their element, but for them, this is the new norm. Hey, we lay in bed, we watch TV. So we have to make sure we understand that. And I think that's why a lot of parents are struggling right now online with their students going to class, and even students who are adults going to class. I just recently applied to law school and got accepted to law school. So here I am with a master's degree in education, finishing up my specialist degree. And I decided, you know what? During this pandemic, I got a chance to go to law school. So I applied to law school, got in. And so I'm doing a shift. But guess what? I'm having to go to law school online, and I think a lot of people need to understand that we got a lot of things that are going to be new for us. And with that new change, we're going to see an evolution of the new norms. And those new norms are going to have us changing the way that we do things, And I think that's a very good question. What is the new norm? The new norm is changing your mind and being flexible. If you're not flexible right now in this day and age, you're not willing to give some to get some, I think you're going to fail. I think you got to be able to understand. We're not going to be able to deliver education in the same way. There's going to be a hybrid model always.
Yeah.
And I think that the one thing that we need to remember is this. Time will always tell. And that's something that you should always kind of keep in the back of your mind. Time will always tell. Over time, we'll see what the impact of online learning has been on our students. But I think as educators, we need to go ahead and plan. If our students are not being successful in an online environment, we've got to find ways to engage them in new ways and make those the new norm. Because engagement is important. Relationships are important for students. And I go back to one of my professors, Dr. Womble. She said that that if you want to teach people, you gotta have a relationship, and the lack of a relationship does affect how a student functions in the class.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I think that component and many others. So we'll just go with two. That educational component and the medical or science or data-driven component of the pandemic is going to be something that we're really going to be taking a look at next year and the year after, because again, this is all new. This is all kind of, it's come upon everybody. So we've all had to pivot. We've all had to adjust. We had to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So it's going to be pivotal to see educationally how our young people and our adults and seniors are functioning from an educational standpoint, and then also, and I know Jack is probably going to have a question from it, but also with respect to the pandemic and the vaccine, because it's still in a trial period. What are the after effects? Are there effects 2 months after the shot, 6 months, a year? Which, depending on who you talk to, that could be a reason why folks do take the shot or don't take the shot. What you think, Brother Jack?
Yeah, I was up here laughing because now I just saw they call it the Fauci ouchie,
That's all right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but on a serious note though, um, when you think about what you're breaking down, Cap, the pandemic, uh, you heard Captain Davis say, "Hey, I going back to school, get a law degree." You heard Quill say, "Hey, I'm going back to school, get a master's degree." But I've also heard, and I'd like to get your perspective, Mike, that this has created a lot of entrepreneurs, right?
Mm,
A lot of entrepreneurs came out of this last 12 months.
mm,
And when you think about it, Cap, people are talking about cooking more.
right.
People created some more entrepreneurial type skill sets these last 12 plus months. I know Mike does like music and things of that nature, videos and all that stuff. I'm just curious. Now that these last 12 months, a lot of us had to reset the clock,
Right.
right? Reset the clock on where we want to go, like what we want to do. I mean, for me, man, it was just great spending more time with family. Can I just be honest real quick? To not having to go all over Georgia and do the things that as an elected official, but
Right.
being Zoom, man, listen, such an expert on Zoom. I started investing in Zoom 12 months ago. I got Zoom before it got $100. Now that thing's like $500 a share, right? So I became more interested in stocks. Now I'm not a day trader, not that, but I just for the audience, I'm not a day trader. But what I'm saying is I did more self care. I mean, I work out twice a day. Do more cooking, like it was already mentioned. So, Mike, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I know, in your circle, everybody started coming up with ideas and they may not went back to school like, Corbett and Quillen, but a lot of folks said, you know what, I'm going to invest in myself and do some entrepreneurial things.
Yeah, I feel like the whole pandemic really showed people that nothing is recession proof. So it made people really just think twice about like what they did as far as their living, and like it really put a fire up on the people because it made you take responsibility for your life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the whole recession, well, the whole pandemic, everyone was just focusing on, oh, when's the next stimulus check? But no one was really focusing on how can I take advantage of all this free time to further my education personally, or to actually give myself a step up. So when we're back out in the world, I'm not in the same place. One of my friends said a very, 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 very good quote. He was like, if you have been sitting in your house for 12 months and you're in the same place that you started, you just wasted a year of your life. So me personally, last year around this time, I started my day trading journey. I actually do day trade, and I was able to teach myself funded by the government. So like me, I was one of those people. I invested my stimulus and I taught myself a skill that would teach me how to fish for the rest of my life. So with that being said, I really feel like this was a good time for me personally. I know that for most people they were really struggling and going through things, but this was a time where I actually got to find myself. I taught myself new skills. I built new relationships because of new apps and whatnot. Thanks to Clubhouse, I'm reaching people that I would have never been able to reach. And like, it's just been a blessing and it's been a curse. So it's really how you take your perspective. Some people look at it as my bottle is half full. Some people look at it as it's half empty.
Watch
It's
out.
basically like, how are you going to take it? It really gave me time to really work on my mental too, because I had to realize that you have to, like Derek said, you have to take self-help and you have to make that your first priority. This pandemic made me become more of a not selfish, but a selfish person, because I'm selfish with my time, because I know that tomorrow's not promised. Why? Because 500,000 people aren't here. They don't have a tomorrow. So it's just it really made me like buckle down, and I feel like it made a lot of people in my generation realize like, look, we're going to be the elders one day. So if we don't want to live in a world of chaos and unorchestrated events and whatnot, we need to really buckle down and we need to set examples, because there are people watching us. The kids of tomorrow, they're watching what we're doing now to see how they should respond if this ever happens again. You know,
Right.
so it just I really feel like that it's a learning lesson, because it showed us that as a society, we're really not as prepared for success like we thought we were. Because honestly, if we were more on the preventive mind state, we wouldn't be in a pandemic mode. If people were actually going and cleaning up behind themselves before the virus, then it wouldn't be we need to go and buy all the cleaning supplies off of Amazon. No, so it really shows that we really need to work on a lot of stuff. But that's how I just look at it.
And I was going to mention something you said that made me just really think about, that I wanted to really just kind of touch on. The reinventing of yourself and the reinventing of your trade. You said something. Nothing's pandemic proof. Let me give you an example. There are a few fields that are pandemic proof, and the medical field has been one of those fields that people have migrated to. You know, if you were to ask anyone about a job and I say, hey, look here, become a paramedic, become an EMT, become a nurse, go into respiratory therapy, any of these fields you could go into. A lot of people shy away from the medical field. But the reason that I'm hitting on something you say, a lot of people have not taken the time to reinvent themselves or reinvent their business. Let me give you an example of what I mean is that there was a restaurant in New York and I was watching it on CNN and they were talking to them. They went from serving, extremely good Italian food. From that to closing down and then re-emerging as a grocery store. And they provided groceries, local farm, farm to table food for people in the community. And I think that when we start thinking about what this pandemic has done, is forced us to reevaluate our comfort zones. You know, a lot of people have not done that. And when you touched on it, if you want to be able to survive, you've got to reinvent yourself, reevaluate yourself, and re-engage yourself. Those three R's, you got to do them. You've got to re-engage yourself. You've got to reinvest and reinvent what you're doing. And I just think that you touched on exactly what I think I've told my kids, I've told family members. You've been at home for 12 months and you didn't take an opportunity to go back to school. Even take a training course. You mess yourself up. You've wasted time.
It's funny you mentioned that, Cap, because I think if I can use myself as an example, I think in a lot of ways I did that during the time of the pandemic. I mean, I was at the fire department. I retired, and it was a combination of what you said, but I believe too it was timing, because I was able to pivot from the fire department, go in another, a slightly different direction, doing some of the similar types of work, some of the similar skill sets, but to go into a whole nother profession and be able to, which is where I am now. So I literally came out of my turnout coat and went in straight into a bow tie. But it was an opportunity that had I rested on my laurels, had I not been ready, had I not been prepared, had I not had the support from family and friends, because all in all, it was my decision, but it was a collective decision, if you follow me. Um, so if those things hadn't have been in place, then I may not have been able to, I could have just stayed where I was, and that would have been fine. But I feel with the way that I was able to pivot and to move, there was some growth. It's still growing. I think as long as we're breathing, we're growing. But there was an opportunity to learn slightly different skill set to uh, reinforce some practices that perhaps were set to the side, and have a different perspective and a new outlook on really on life, because it was mentioned before, we're not, things aren't, in a way, things shouldn't be the way they used to be. There should be a blossoming of different ways in which we handle our business, the ways which we are being educated, the way in which we grow and nurture relationships, and just the way we honestly, just the way we do business. And I believe that from this pandemic, um, it's, if we choose to take it in a positive course of action, I believe that's something, at least for me personally, that's something truly that's been able to, that I've been able to bring from this. Now, are there some negatives? Yeah, and I'm not, and I'm working those out, but I choose to highlight the positives as opposed to the negative. There's enough negative in the world already, right?
Yeah.
So I like to highlight the positives, and then I'll make sure that I tighten up on those things to bring it all full circle.
Cap, as you were sharing, a couple questions came to mind, and this is a toss up to everyone. Even if an individual decided to do nothing these last 12 months, society kept on evolving.
Oh yeah.
And so I want to know what was your perspective on the social unrest? Now there's two bookends. Now I want you to think about the question before you answer it. Now, in July of 2020, Black Lives Matter peaceful protests showed up in Washington, D.C., July 2020. January 6th of 2021, another protest showed up in Washington, D.C. It was not peaceful, right? And we clearly know the difference between the two, right? One had a hanging noose, the other one did not. One, there was a police officer killed, the other one not. The other one had dozens of injuries, the other one did not, right? But there was completely difference between the two. And starting with Quillen, because I know you said you did African American studies. What was your perspective on the social unrest these past 12 months? And let's just go right around the table here of your perspective on what happened from your vantage point. Because that definitely happened during the pandemic.
Yes, sir. Excellent question. And I'm in the Department of African Studies, but African American is our brother and sister. But what I will say about that is we really got to be able to see clear overall, and the rest of the world got to be able to see clear overall. And I want to be able to start with the first incident last year, going off of George Floyd. Like we everybody on here, has an awareness or an enlightenment to a certain degree about what's going on as it pertains to the war on Black people and specifically the war on Black men. You know, and what what the tragedy of George Floyd was an example of, was that it was so extreme and it was so out there that it got to a point to where it couldn't be ignored anymore. It actually had to be acknowledged. That's not the first time things like that have happened, and in previous times or modern times, but it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, it's so out there and extreme that it cannot be able to be ignored. So we have to actually acknowledge it now. And also other people around the world are able to be able to reflect on the United States and see what it looks like in this way in modern times today, because they're not often being able to get a chance to see that. And we saw something very interesting happening around the world as people were reflecting on what's going on with the Black people here in America. Um, and so I also would like to be able to say too, because with BLM, Black Lives Matter, or just protests in general, there's been mixed feelings about it, understandably so. And I want to be able to start with some of the good things first. There are a lot of people that are engaging in those movements and engaging in Black Lives Matter that are very genuine, and they really are trying to be able to just do whatever it is that they can or do something in order to be able to have a positive effect. But then you also have to be able to look at the other side of that. You know, who is putting together these movements? Where is the money that's funded for these things? Where is it going? And how is it contributing to Black people that are in America, which is the cause for the whole movement going? Where is that going? Okay, what good is it doing for us specifically, other than us being able to be in the limelight? What are we getting done? Are the laws changing that are going to be able to assist us? Are we getting the tangibles that we need to in order to be able to build up our communities? Are we getting reparations? These are the type of things in which actions like that, those are the type of results that need to be able to be received, but those things are not being able to be received. And of course, it's by design. In addition to that, when we reflect on what happened in January, I think it was January, right? With the with the fiasco.
Yeah, January 6th.
Yes, sir. And when we reflect on that and we see the difference, and one of the big things that's not looked at as it pertains to Black people, you said that has a lot to do with you, although it may not be addressed directly. See, that is looking at who is going to be able to be controlling or oppressing you, and specifically more so also the foundational Black Americans. Now, this is getting into the people that were already here before slavery, the Black explorers that came here as well, and then the descendants from that were brought from the African slave trade. So this is also pertaining to, okay, what happened in those Capitol riots is going to be saying who is going to be able to be directing what, who is going to be able to have control over what. See, that's another thing, and they're showing an example of how this race of people, or people that perhaps look like this or maybe side like this, how we can be able to do this and we will not get penalized for it. Or if we do get penalized for it, we'll get slaps on the wrist like they did. Versus if you look at the level of the crime commitment for the acts, those are very serious crime commitments that usually would be heavily penalized in a court of law. And you have to be able to understand and really see what's going on, because a lot of people are napping right now when you really need to make sure that you're awakening your awareness. And one of the things I found, and this goes beyond academic and scholarly, you have to make sure that you're doing your research out here. You have to be aware of this information that we're speaking about right now. You can't just be in the sauce. You know, it's not going to help you, and it's not going to help our people, and it's not going to help the earth overall. You know, it could be reading, it could be listening to videos, it could be listening to this platform that we're on right now to make sure that you're enlightened on these things. You know, and also just being in circles, making sure that you're looking at documentaries. You know, it's a lot of ways in which you can making sure that you're enlightened, but you got to make sure that you understand what's going on, because so that you can be able to know how you can be able to be an asset, or at least how you can be able to not be a depreciating asset to the cause in which we need to be able to push forward on.
Right.
So I want to be able to say that as it relates to those things, because it's very important. And you know, if there's another question that stems off of that, I'll be glad to add to it, but I'll close on that.
Absolutely.
I hope I
Mike, what's
answered
it?
I
Yeah,
just wanna
what say you, Mike?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I mean, I just
Oh,
wanted
go
to
ahead,
ask
go
you
ahead,
a
go ahead.
question. One of the things that I think that you said that needs to be for everyone to understand is that you got to do your research, and I think research is so important. Um, and let me go back and just say this. In the Black community, one of the things that we typically do is we listen to others and then ignore their advice on one side, but then on the other side, we listen to them and then we don't do enough research to understand if they're telling the truth or not. So I think it's important. Research is important. You know, there's a lot of people who are captive in one mindset. That's my mindset. So when you look at Black Lives Matter, you need to understand um, there are mindsets out there that would never think that anyone who's involved in Black Lives Matter is not someone that is doing good for all races. You know, you got people thinking that Black Lives Matter um, is equated to some type of cult that is brewing hate among the Black community on other races. Um, but what they've not done their research either. But in the Black community, one of the things I think that we have to be able to understand, there's a difference between racism, prejudice, and discrimination. People need to understand all those elements, okay? To be able to understand, because there's a lot of people who are racist. There's a lot of people who discriminate against, you know, your race, another race. There's people who don't understand, you know, the understanding of how prejudice is enlightened, how it drives people's understanding. So I say that because I think you did hit on something that I think that we miss out is how do we teach our people, you know, in the Black community, in any community, to research, you know, and you know, before you hate, research why are you hating, you know, you know, you're thinking that Black Lives Matter is a problem when you haven't researched the what was the reason it was started. Um, you know, my daughter often asks me the question. She said, "Dad," she said, "why don't they have a like BET?" She said, "Why don't they have like a WET?" You know, and I had to explain to her. I said, you know, there's a, we've been deprived for so many years that we haven't been able to have something that we can showcase ourselves. And so understanding that, I had to explain to her. She said, well, doesn't that mean that we're discriminating against other people, you know, who, and I said, I don't think we discriminate. I think we're we're bringing light to that. We have Black actors. We have people who are excelling just as well as other races, but we're so strangled in our abilities to be able to come to the top like the cream, when the cream comes to the top, we have to be able to understand that we have to promote ourselves. And I just go back to what you're saying. I think you're dead on it. And I think there's a lot of people who don't understand that we have to evolve. We have to research. We have to know. The knowledge is important. Without knowledge, you're destined to not succeed. So knowledge is important.
I feel like to just turn it to like a positive side for a second. One thing that I did learn is that when we want to go out and make a change, we can actually do it. And when they see the result of us making a change, they get fearful because they know that if we can do it one time, then we can do it another time and another time. And then eventually the power struggle is not going to be a power struggle. It's going to be equal because now we have more people that are aware of the importance of going out to vote and what we're actually voting for. And now that we are actually seeing the results of what happens when you get up and you go express yourself and you go and cast your vote, now more people, I feel like that was their wake-up call, and as far as the raid on the Capitol or whatnot, I feel like that was a wake-up call to show us what they will do if they don't get their way, that sense of entitlement, so it's really taking off a shell and a cover to show us what people's real intentions are and what people really feel inside behind the fake smiles and laughs.
Mhm.
That's a good point, and that from a positive standpoint, I choose to go the same route you went, Mike, in terms of positivity. Uh, really, an awakening, if you will, a resurgence of what we know we are capable of and what we can do to make this a better place. It's allowed for us to be able to, like with what Cap said, to be able to know what it is to do research, to take a deeper dive, to look beyond what seems to be the obvious, and to really flesh out what's really important in order for us to be better. I think as a people, we've always been strong, we've always been determined, we've always been focused and driven. And along the way and over the years, things kind of fall to the wayside. We get comfortable, right? And we we fall into an area of being settled or being complacent or just being good where we are. But then we have something like that that really kind of forces us to get on our game, get back on the horse and let's ride. Let's join together. I know it doesn't always look like that. If you uh, look at the idiot box, we see all this stuff that's going on, but just a way to be able to pull away from that and to really focus on those things that are really important: brotherhood and sisterhood and supporting one another and striving to be better and just really making this place called Earth a better place to be, because it's not just what we're going through. It's not just, obviously it's not just here in the US. It's all over the world. Even with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, those things that we saw like right before our very eyes, it took off beyond, I believe, even with the most recent um, Asian American Pacific Islander push
Hmm.
to not hate. I know Brother Jack uh, I saw him in a press conference talking about that very thing from a legislative matter, and that's his bailiwick. So I know he'll get into that, but just even bringing that into the fold, connecting everybody, because this went all around the world. Everyone was tuned in to what was going on here. But again, on a more positive note, getting utilizing, taking in those life lessons and using those as a catapult to move forward, to be better and to do better. Uh, as it relates to whatever it is that we're doing, if it's work, if it's relationship, if it's um, our faith, whatever that is, to move it in a better direction.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cap. And this is a good segue into talking about politics because we watched those of us in Georgia, and I'm sure across the nation, where last year the election was absolutely critical in terms of the election. And so let's talk about politics. We talked about pandemic. We definitely share our perspective from a man's point of view about the pandemic. But what about politics, right? Because politics, to your point, Cap, it impacts and touches all of us, every aspect. And to pull in what Corbett said, researching should be part of politics before you go and vote. But Quillen made a point that I want us to bring it and highlight in the political atmosphere too. Because when you compare Black Lives Matter and then the insurrection on January 6th, that was all, you know, motivated because of this political theater that we had, right? There's this sense of fear or entitlement, depending on who you are. So somebody taking something from me, or I'm entitled to get it. So, and this is not about, you know, what political affiliation you're in or how did you vote last year. This is more about how can you all be more engaging in the political theater? What are you doing when it's time to vote, regardless if it's a primary or general election? When it's time to vote, I don't care if you vote for dog catcher. What do you do? What do you do? Do you take time to research the candidates? What, you know, Corbett was talking about researching, or do we really look in, like Brother Quillen said, open up our eyes. We see what's going on, right? You see what's going on. Does that intrinsically motivate you to go and vote? Let's start with you, Mike. What are your thoughts about us being, as men, being engaged in politics? And what do you do when you start to think about, okay, it's the election cycle? How engaged? What do you do to become more engaged, or are you engaged in the political process?
Um, Me personally, I feel like honestly, I was one of those people that my lights were turned on during the whole pandemic because I honestly didn't really focus on politics because I knew that they were all, well, most of them were corrupt because they'll tell you what you need to hear to get what they need out of you and then flip the script. That was my bias on it. But going through this whole pandemic, it really opened my eyes and showed me that it is a more serious matter and I need to really dive a little bit deeper. So I personally don't feel like me giving a statement on this topic would actually do any good because before the pandemic I wasn't really that engaged. So yeah, I'll pass it.
Okay. Quillen, what say you?
Yes, sir. Um, well, one of the most important things is as Black people and specifically foundational Black Americans, we have to be able to get on what's called on code. Now, this is equivalent to being on the same page, but if you see like a lot of other, or excuse me, all the other races and ethnic groups, they have an understanding of being on code with each other and on the same page, on in agreements, you know, so that we can be able to get things done and so that we can be able to look out for one another. And also, you know, when we do, because we say, okay, well, we need unity or we need to come together. Okay, well, what are we going to do when we actually do get together and we come together? Okay, like let's lay out what it is. Look at our community. What is it that we need? Okay, now look at what is the work that needs to be put in order to be able to get what we need, and then how it can be able to get done. Okay, these are systems of getting on code. Okay, how can we direct away from being against each other when we need to actually be able to be on accord with each other. See, this is an on code that we need to be able to have with each other. Sometimes it's not always about, oh, I like you, or I like, maybe something that you may have did before, or I didn't like it, or I don't like you. It's not always about that. It's about the code. Not always, and it's not always about a particular leadership. So sometimes it's not always about feelings. Life is not about feelings. It's about getting things done. It's not always about how we feel, because sometimes our feelings can be able to put us in bad positions, whereas we just stay the course that we need to stay on, and we can be able to actually be more productive, and things can work out overall, and then, we'll feel better. Or we'll feel better right in the moment, because we know we made the right decision. It's not always about, liking someone, or how we may feel about something that may have happened. Okay. So then, an additional portion of that, I remember, I'm not sure if you brothers are familiar with the Moorish Science Temple of America, started by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I'm a member as well, and we have what's called civics classes. So the Grand Sheikh, Brother Haru, he had laid out some of the things that we can be able to make sure that we have an understanding on as it pertains to politics. Okay, so one of the things too, even I want to say, in addition to what he said, we need to make sure that locally we're on point as far as the politics. Knowing, like, okay, like locally is really one of the more important base that you need to maybe really focus on. Like, okay, this is stuff that affects you more so directly, and also where you are. Okay, like know what type of policies, whoever is running, what are they doing? How is it that they're going to do it? Does it look like it makes sense for what is needed, and also for what's going to affect you, your family, and then the community? And then look and see, like, okay, when they actually get in office, okay, how are you going to be able to be held accountable for being able to do these things? So that's another portion of it. Okay, let's go to the civics classes that I was talking about, the Moorish Science Simple. So Brother Grand Sheikh Haru Ranisi L, he was laying out that we need to be able to get uh, certain people that are going to be politicians that are going to benefit us. So seeing, okay, like getting together with the politicians and being like, okay, hey, this is what we want. We have an agenda here. What do you need so that you can be able to be successful? And this is going to also include, this is going to be an additional thing. This is going to also include, we're going to need to fund the politicians, because a lot of times, as our people, why we're losing out on these things is because, you know, other groups like, the LGBTQ, or, certain other ethnicities and race groups, they're contributing funds to the politicians. And so, they're like, hey, we're looking out for you. We're backing you in your campaign. Hey, look out for us as well. Let us do the same thing. Like, hey, we'll fund you. Look out for us. These are the things we want. Put these rules in place, and then we'll continue to support you as you continue to move forward. You see how we're looking out for you now. Look out for us when you get into office, and they can be able to have a base, and that also helps for the politician. Also, those who are helping with the campaign, for them to be able to have a base to be able to go off of. Be like, okay, well, I don't need to sell out, or I don't need to go to outside sources that are not going to be as beneficial for myself, my well-being, and also my community. I already have my community backing me, and I'm already good, so that we can be able to really move forward, and we can be able to really get the things in place that we really need, so that we can be able to be productive as a community. And in addition to that, what we need to be able to also look at and understand is, like, think about what is it that you actually really want, and look at the past, because a lot of people, they just like to look presidential. Yes, it is important, but look at, like, how is it that these individuals and these campaigns, and then all of those that are involved, how are they contributing to you specifically? How are they contributing to your community specifically? How have they been doing it? Because if you look at who's in office right now, as far as the president, he is giving tangibles to other ethnic groups and other races as far as black, and all the presidents have done is Trump wasn't, he really didn't do too much to us. He actually kind of helped us out in some ways, but I'll get to that later. But they are giving tangibles and things in which the other communities need and also can put to use that are specifically for them. And they are getting the benefits of it when we are not as black people. And we also have to, and this is very important, we also have to be very careful when they try to link us in with minorities. That is not you, black people. That is not foundational black Americans. Okay. When we're speaking about that, you have to be able to be careful as it pertains to minorities, because what has happened, what is happening, is when we link ourselves with those groups, other races, they tend to get the benefits, or other people tend to get the benefits or the tangibles when we don't get anything and we don't benefit from it. If you look at what's going on now, we're not benefiting from that. We look at what has happened before, we're not benefiting from that. So we have to look and see, like, okay, how specifically is this going to be able to benefit our group, which is black people or foundational black Americans? How is this going to be able to benefit us? How can we be able to contribute to the politicians or to the campaign so that when they actually do get in office, they'll look out for us? And also being on code, just us being in agreement so that we can be able to get the goals accomplished. And then, we can sort that other stuff. We can sort the differences out later. So I don't want to get too long-winded, but I did want to add that.
Yeah, no, I think that is a perfect strategy that one can use. But as you were breaking it down, Quillen, and this question is for you, Corbett. When you engage your elected official, it doesn't matter if it's at a federal level, state level, county level, city, municipality. How do you get your interests across in order for you, as Quillen said, hold somebody accountable, right? Mike said it as well. That accountability, we're starting to hear more and more of it. Especially these last 4 years. How do you hold your elected official accountable, Corbett?
Well, I think it's I have to start off by first saying this: you got to know them. That's, if you don't know your politicians, you don't know who's in your seat. I guarantee you, I could talk to everyone on my street, and they could probably name one person that is in office that represents our particular district area. When you go to the ballot, many people don't know who they're voting for. They pick the incumbent, they pick Democrat, they pick Republican. And that's something important to understand, is that you got to know the people that you're engaging with. At some point in time, most of our politicians have probably got into office based on people understanding that, what their values are. What are they looking at? Like Quillian was saying, you got to be on code. You want to know if that person is connected to your values, your thought process. So for me, I'm going to break it down very simple. For me, it's about understanding who you have in office and what they're doing to benefit you. As a county employee, one of the things that I would always say is that we need someone to run for office who could make sure we change things internally for us in the fire department. It would be good if we had someone who's on the city council, on the county commissioners, that understood what's going on internally. Then I realized is that sometimes that thought process is that we need to put someone in power who can make sure that we get our agenda passed. So for me, I think we have to be able to understand it from all aspects. Mm-hmm. So for me, it starts off by, you got to know who the people you're voting for. Mm-hmm. If you've never taken the time, go back to research. If you've never taken the time to research who's in your district, that is the time that you need to do that before the day before the election. Um, Many times we get phone calls. I can tell you this: the Democratic parties put a ton of money, because I got a phone call every 20, 30 minutes, or got a text, or got somebody knocking on my door. They were worse than the warranty people. You know, I was knocking on my door every day. Matter of fact, I never really, I was like, well, how do you know who I voted for last time? How do you know how many people are in my household? How do you know? They look at the voter rolls. They got my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
All this
Mm-hmm.
information. So Quillian, what I'm about to say is going to be very profound. If they know that, and as the Black community, why are we not privy to this information? Why do we not have this information to hold our elected officials accountable? All this information is out there, but we rarely do the research to find it. What did it cost to get the voter rolls, for a particular district, to find out how many people are represented demographically? How many blacks, how many Caucasians, how many, Asian people, how many, of any particular race, or, or creed, or ethnic, background. How did we get that information? So I'm going to start off by saying the first thing we need to do, you need to get out and meet your representatives. Go to their events, talk to them, make yourself known. Because I'm going to tell you this: there's a lot of advisory boards that have politicians on it. Me and Catherine Jackson served on a advisory board for one of the local organizations here in Stone Mountain for a long period of time. And I can tell you this: on that board were several elected officials. And elected officials, they like to have that involvement in community, sponsored events, community understandings, because it is important to meet the constituents.
Yep.
So if they're joining, engaging us in these type of committees, these type of events, we need to get out and meet them. We don't need to just say, I'm sick of what they're doing here in the county, blah, blah, blah. We need to be in the place to know them, meet them, and understand and find out what their views and their values are. We got to hold them accountable. You got to get out and meet them.
You're right.
Hey, so Captain Eric, so you live in a very heavy political theater county.
Mm-hmm.
All things politics over on your side of the ATL. How do you engage your elected official?
Similar to that, I engage with them the same way we as adults need to engage with this newer generation, that is, meet them where they are. So I meet them where they are. It may be the store, it may be, this is both pre-pandemic and current pandemic. Before it was at the school for the community meeting. Now it's on a Zoom or Teams meeting that's got about 30 or 40 people. You meet them, you see them in the church. Well, before the pandemic. Now again, everything, a lot of stuff has been moved online, but the point is you meet them where they are. You engage them, you engage with them. You talk to them about the issues, you talk to them about the process, and then just to kind of dial it back some, almost before you do that, you yourself engage in what Brother Davis was talking about, doing research, find out about the process. There are a lot of us that were hands off for whatever reason to the political process. I understand what, folks having preconceived notions about the process or validated reasons as to why they weren't involved, but there has to be some point where there needs to be resolved with that so we can get about the business of the day. And the business is, I've got to be able to talk with Brother Jack about what initiatives, what legislative initiatives are being pushed or being talked about and discussed that have to do with our daily lives. I spoke with him when I was talking with Jack I think it was just last night before. Um, he used an expression that was indicative of him literally pulling his hair out because of all the political wrangling that was going on with this particular piece of legislation. And that's but it's knowing what that process is all about. Once you know about the process, then we can go about figuring how we can engage in that process. And for us, it's getting out there and voting. Now we've got certainly our work cut out for us in making sure that we get ourselves and others out to vote, because it's out there for us to do. Several years ago, there were numbers, statistics, there was data there that just did not that was showing we weren't getting out there to vote. We just weren't. I mean, on a perfectly sunny, bright, brisk day, we didn't even turn the knob to the front door to get out and go vote. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to get past that, because there are decisions that are being made again about our daily lives and we're not even a part of it. And that is our right to do, to be able to engage in that process. And along the way, you factor in the different variables and so forth that will help you to make an informed decision. But it's to know about the process, get involved in the process, engage those individuals who are going to be a part of the decision makers, and talk with them. Their numbers are out there. They post all that information, social media information, phone numbers. They post that stuff for a reason. They have legislative aides that in their absence, they can meet you or talk with you via Zoom or what have you, so that they can flush out any sort of questions that you have. Because when it comes time to vote, and certainly with the laws that they're passing now, is definitely no nonsense. Like the one where Brother Mike was just having them a sip of water. They're making it so that they're putting charges on you if you hand out water at the polls, where there's the likelihood in these days and times that you're going to be standing out there for hours and hours. So it's those types of things of being knowledgeable about, so that if we need to stand in peaceful protest, make the phone calls, send the emails, whatever needs to be done to either make these issues right, make them wrong, or not make them wrong, but make our voices heard, allow our voices to be heard, so that where Representative Jackson is at the Gold Dome, those messages along his colleagues can be passed along, so that we can have, again, so we have a better quality of life.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Well, listen, I want us to end on a lighter note, because we talked about the pandemic. We know that it's very, very heavy. Like you broke down, Captain Eric, about over 500,000 Americans died, right? I mean, and folks starting to get their vaccination shots now. And then we talked about the politics, because politics impact us all. Our lives has changed significantly these last 12 months. But in the next 10 minutes, I want us to talk about the other difference that we all experience, and that's sports. Listen, I got to be real with you, Corbett. I don't watch sports the way I used to. It just feels different. The way I watch football is different. The way I watch the NBA is different. Basketball, it's just different. It's I don't know what it is. Maybe because I can't go and watch it in person, or when I watch it on television, just the whole artificial noise and claps in the hand. It's just Mike. It's just fake to me. Corbett, do you still watch sports the way you used to? If not, why? If so, how?
Well, let me say this, as being a loyal Falcons fan, I'm a season ticket holder.
Well, yeah, okay. Next question. There's no difference for you.
You got the right one now.
Hey, let me say what I. This is my piece on this. recently, me and my wife, we just upgraded our tickets. And they sent us the paperwork to upgrade. And I was really hesitant about upgrading. Been a loyal Falcons fan, for all my life. My dad was going back to Steve Barkowski. We've been in the game, we've been watching it.
Wow, long time.
I'm gonna tell you this. I was real hesitant about last season. We obviously didn't get a chance to even really engage in the game. I love football. I love watching, but more than anything, I love tailgating. You know, if you take tailgating versus watching the game, I would literally go into the dome, watch the game for the first half, and come back out and tailgate for the rest of the game. I'm For me, sports is I love sports. I grew up playing baseball, grew up playing football, went to play football in high school, and I'm just be very honest. It's something gone. It's something missing. You know, the interaction we have. Like looking at the drafts, looking at all the different events that are normally live.
Yeah.
Now looking at them, making putting people in the stands on a screen,
Cardboard box,
fake fans. It just doesn't feel the same, and I think that's the problem. As a fan, I need the experience. I need the interaction. I need the potential of seeing something live. And for me, I'm sitting at home and I'm eating wings, watching the game. I get up and go outside and get bored with it. I just want to see the beginning. I want to see the halftime show, and then I want to see who won. And that's become the norm for us now. I can rewind as much as I want. So it's no need for me to rush to watch the game. I'm not planning for it anymore. So yeah, so it's different. And I think that as they phase sports back in, some are going to be in the bubble, some are not going to be in the bubble. I think the new norm is like we talked about earlier for sports is there's going to be a new fan. That new fan is going to choose how they want to engage the game. They may not want to come to the stadium anymore. And I just thought this, when we got ready to renew our tickets and upgrade, I was like, you know what, let's go in and upgrade. Let's get some new seats. Maybe that'll change our thought process. Maybe it'll make us feel better. But honestly, I was hesitant about even buying my tickets this year. I just thought that it wasn't something that I didn't think that the pandemic is really just taking the life out of me as a fan.
Wow.
And I'm at a point now where, I'd rather tailgate at home and watch the game than to go to the game and tailgate. It's just it's not there for me anymore.
Yeah, you mentioned something very powerful there when you started talking about the experience of it all. Quillen, I mean, how about you? It looks like you can call up your boys and say, hey man, let's watch the game, get some food of choice, beverages of choice, whatever. Do y'all still do that, or is it about the experience like Corbett was breaking down for us? Is it the experience different? I mean, looking at cardboard boxes. I mean, the person, on the same. Hey, Captain Eric. I mean, they're just staring like this, like they're like this for the whole game, right? I mean, they're like it's just lifeless. Quillen, what about you? Do you still watch sports the same way, or is your experience the same as Brother Corbett's?
Well, I want to say, man, shout out to the loyal Falcons fan up in here, and I'm a loyal Hawks fan.
I'm sorry.
Hey man, free the birds, man.
I'm sorry. Well, listen, listen. Before Quillen finishes his thought, listen. Nobody can be a loyal Falcons fan. I'm this for the record, Captain Eric. This for the record. You are up by 28 points in the Super Bowl.
Talk about the past now.
And you
growth is about elevation, not going back to the past.
I'm sorry.
It's
You know, it's
a
always that
He's
one
just
person in the
saying.
group that gonna mess it up for everybody.
I'm just saying. It's you name the sport. Everybody keeps saying this. The worst result or the best comeback ever of any sport has been the Patriots beating the Falcons.
Hey man.
Boxing, equestrian, golf.
He said equestrian.
That's so disrespectful, man.
Wow.
Hey,
Go
he
ahead,
went
Quillen.
there too. He went.
Go
He
ahead.
didn't just go there.
I
He
smell a
went
lot of
there.
hate in the room, you
He
know.
said
Hey,
equestrian.
Hey, who is your team, by the way?
Oh, my team got 5 Super Bowl rings. They've
Hey,
been to the Super Bowl 11 times. I mean, let's not go there. Let's not go there. We got 5 rings.
hey man,
5
go ahead
rings.
and
hey, I'm gonna say it like we say every year. This is our year.
But go ahead, Quillen. I mean, is your
Brother,
experience?
you probably wouldn't understand. It's an Atlanta thing, you know.
ATL baby. ATL baby.
Ooh.
hey, we got that comeback
But
spirit, man.
But I just think Quillen, the experience. I'm with Corbett on this. I just think the experience. It's about the experience, and that has changed significantly these past 12 months.
Yeah, man. The experience is huge, you know, as a person that's dived into studies in college deeply these amount of years since I've been in, and also you find things that you're interested in outside the college that you want to study on and participate in. I used to be on it like that, especially when it came to basketball. But like, you know, it's kind of settled a little bit as far as me being on it like that, you know, as much as I used to be. But when I catch a game every now and then, it's like it's still something amazing about it, man. Because one of the big things for me, I remember when I played for McNair Middle School basketball, man. That's when me and Mike, you know, we had met there. And my coach said, he said, you know, people don't ask you how well did you play, they ask you, did you win?
Yeah.
I was like, huh. After he said that, I started looking at sports different. I started looking at like, okay, like how are the players doing? Not just like, okay, who won the game.
Right.
You know, I'm actually trying to see like, okay, like how are you using your skills? How are you engaging in the game? Like what are you doing to make it interesting? So I'm looking at the athletes and how they doing. In addition to the experience of, you know, the fans and if we got food or if we all hanging out together and enjoying it. I'm also looking at like, okay, like, you know, what are the athletes giving on us because they're leaving it all on the floor. One of the greatest finals performances I've ever seen is LeBron and them other dudes versus the Golden State Warriors, man, in the finals, bro. That was one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen somebody do, you know. And just what he showed was just very special. I'll never forget that, you know. And it was beyond the fans and, you know, the experience and stuff like that. I'm in my house watching, but you know, it's like you know, you seeing the elevation of God in these brothers, because a lot of times it's brothers, you know, doing their thing out there. You really seeing the elevation of God put out there in that particular form of sports, you know, to be able to help us to be able to enjoy that. And I would say, you know, it's what I like to see is like what are the athletes giving us, you know, and it was tough to be able to watch that too with LeBron and versus Golden State Warriors. I was like Revenge of the Light Skinned Brothers versus LeBron. You know, yeah, man. It goes hand in hand. The experience is big for me because that's when I'm there. When I actually go to a game, I'm all about that experience, man. But like if it's a real interesting game, then I'm trying to be interested in the game to see how they doing out there. Hey, how we looking out there? But at the same time, it's just the feeling of being there, being out. Like when the Raptors, who was it? Was it the Warriors? The Raptors and the Warriors. I went. This is before COVID, of course. I went out to like a really nice like sports like bar just to watch the game with everybody else. I went by myself. I didn't know nobody there. And it was just amazing because it was the last game too. And it was just amazing to be able to be in that atmosphere and see how everybody was just involved. And it was fun, man. Everybody hooping and hollering. And I was in it too. And just me coming there by myself and being there, how it can just be an enjoyment for you. So that's what I said.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good space too. It's a good space when you have sports like that. And I believe sports is here for a reason. It is a good thing. Got some things to work out with that, but all in all, it's a great experience. Camaraderie, and I'm talking about all colors, ethnicities, everything. A lot of those things that seem to be triggers, politically or spiritually or what have you. The sports is the one thing that kind of allows for you to break away from all the super seriousness and get out there and fist bump and do all that cheering. And speaking of cheering, we're hearing, I thought I heard some music. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. There it is. But as we close this thing out, we are so welcome that you were able to join us, Brother Corbett, Brother Q, on behalf of myself, the captain, our rep, Derek Jackson, and Money Mike, the entrepreneur to be, and of course, our EP behind the scenes, Ms. Jacqueline. We thank you, and all that you said and all that you heard is our point of view.
Our point of view.
Our point of view.
Appreciate y'all coming.